If you've ever wanted to build the world's smallest mob farm, well then this mod is for you. Welcome to Hostile Neural Networks. Now honestly, this mod is probably one of the simplest mods that you will ever have to deal with because it only really revolves around two blocks. That is the simulation chamber and the loot fabricator. Now the simulation chamber is pretty interesting because this is basically the brain of the operation and it's what's actually going to do the mob farming for you. Whereas the loot fabricator is going to turn the results of your simulation chamber into loot that you can actually use. But the easiest way to explain how this works is to start at the very beginning and run through a full mob farm setup. So the very first thing that you're going to want is one of these model frameworks, and they're used to build data models. These things here are your data models, so we have them for the Ender Dragon, we have them for the Warden, and then we have a few for modded creatures that are in the All the Mods 10 pack, but you should be able to use these for pretty much any mod pack that this mod is in. Now this mod is similar to Mystical Agriculture in that you can't actually farm this from nothing. You actually need to have killed each mob at least a few times to get things started. Before we leave though, you're going to want to make a deep learner. Now this is pretty cheap to make, it just requires some obsidian, a couple of redstone bits and some glass. So just make this before you leave. Don't worry too much about what it does at the moment. We will go over that once we have our model framework all set up. So now that we've got our deep learner, our model framework, and some sort of combat gear ready to go, we just need to go and hunt down a specific type of mob. Now we're here in an ancient city so that we can fight a warden just for demonstration purposes. But let's go and spawn one in and see what we need to do. Okay, there he is. So what we're going to need to do is go up to him and right click on him with the model framework. That is going to give us a warden data model. When we take a look at the warden data model, you'll see there's 4 bits of information on here. You have the tier, the data collected, the data per kill, and the simulation costs. Now the only thing I want you to worry about right now is the tier, because it is currently set to faulty and we need to upgrade that to basic. And you might be thinking, well hell, how do I do that? Well, that is nice and simple. You use the deep learner that we made earlier. If we open up the deep learner, you will see that it says no data model found and it won't give us any information. However, as soon as we put in the warden data model, we get statistics, we get some more information, and more importantly, it gives us the model accuracy and what it requires to upgrade to the next tier. If you are running around with the data model in hand, it will show you in the top left exactly how many you need as well. But the only problem is, as soon as you switch to a sword, it disappears, which is not ideal. However, there are a few things that you can do. The first thing you can do is simply stick it in your offhand, and then that's always going to show it as long as you have it equipped, no matter what your primary weapon is. But that is a little bit rubbish and should only really be used as an absolutely last resort. The great thing about the deep learner is you can actually use curio slots for it. Some packs will have a very specific section which allows you to just put the deep learner in there without using any of your other curio slots. If you don't have a dedicated slot like this though, you can simply put it in a curio slot. It needs to be a basic curio slot. You can't, for example, put it in the body or bracelet or ring slots. None of these are going to work for you. It has to just be a standard curio slot. And this leaves your offhand free for torches or shields or whatever it is that you're wanting. And you'll see that we still have the details in the top left. So now that we've got a warden spawned, we just need to kill it while we have that data model in the learner, and it will decrease by 1. We just need to do this 5 more times and then we will have a basic model. And there we go, we now have a basic tier model. And you will see that this model accuracy has actually gone up from 0% to 6.42%. Now, what does model accuracy actually mean? Well, let's head back to the base and I will show you. So now we're back at base, it's time for us to deal with the simulation chamber and the loot fabricator. So first up, the simulation chamber. What we need to do with this is just put in our Warden model that we upgraded to basic tier. Now, it's worth noting that if you try and put just a faulty tier in here, it just will not work. Very simple, it has to be basic tier at the very least. Now, as you can see, it says we are missing a prediction matrix. Now, a prediction matrix is just one of these things right here. And they're just made with gold, clay, and iron, pretty easy materials to get, and then just a decent amount of glass. But this is probably going to be your biggest bottleneck, because you need one of these for every single time a simulation runs. But we can just put a full stack in here, and it will start running as soon as we put some energy in there. Now, each different mob type has a different energy requirement. So, as you saw in the Warden one, we needed over 2000 FE per tick to get it to run properly. Whereas if we take something like a Blaze, for example, this one will only require 256 FE per tick. And as a general rule, the earlier game you run into these mobs, the easier they are to farm, so therefore the cheaper the energy requirement is. But once we stick some power on here, you'll see that it will start running. And once this gets to 100%, there are two possible outcomes that you can get. The first one is that this fails, and you will get a generalized prediction. In this case, we get the Ender ones because we're doing a Warden model, and for some reason, the Warden is classed as an End mob. Whereas if we do this with something like a Blaze, we should get a generalized Nether prediction. We'll cover those in just a moment. Now, eventually, you're going to get one that says sequence prediction succeeded, and that is going to give you a prediction. Now, these predictions are exactly what we need to be able to get the loot from the mob that we have just simulated. If we put some power onto our loot fabricator and then go into it, put in our Warden predictions, you can see we now have a choice of which drop we want. In my case, I'm going to go for Echo Shards, and then after a little bit of time, that will process the prediction and just give you Echo Shards that you can use. It will keep choosing the same thing that you select over and over again unless you cancel it or change it, which you would just do by clicking the selection at the top. It will delete that one, and then you can pick a new one, such as a heart, for example. Now, as promised, let's discuss these generalized Ender predictions, because what you can do is you can actually convert them into drops from that dimension. So, for example, if you put a couple of sandstone in and an Ender pearl, you can get out a endstone with a prediction, and you actually can get some really good things like dragon's heads, or even blaze rods if you are using the Nether predictions. These come in extremely useful if you don't want to go and farm a bunch of materials yourself, and then you get to use these for quite a while. You won't, however, get them forever, because as this levels up, as you can see, it is now moved to the advanced tier, you will get less and less of the generalized predictions and more of the actual mob predictions. So definitely collect them as you're going along, because you may end up needing them in the future. Now, in terms of the actual tier going up, the higher the tier, the more likely you are to get the predictions, but there are two different ways of leveling it up. The first one is to just leave it in here. It will take quite a while. You do need quite a lot of data to be able to do it, but over time it will level up and your farm will get more and more advanced, all the way up until it is a self-aware Warden, which will give you a 100% chance of getting a Warden prediction. The other way is basically to just do what we were doing before. Just simply go out and find some more of the mob that you're looking to upgrade, and then when you kill them, it will just upgrade the model. Now, as it levels up, you're going to need more and more of them until eventually you get to about 64 is generally what you need to go from the superior tier all the way up to the self-aware tier. Now, of course, you can fully automate this entire process, pulling out the prediction matrices, putting them into the simulation chamber. That will just run the simulations for you, and then pull out the predictions to go into here, or the generalized predictions if it does fail. We then pull the normal prediction into the loot fabricator. That then turns it into the echo shards, and then we finish here. If you do want it to be truly infinite though, you will need some way of auto-crafting this, so some AE2 system or something like that will do the trick, and you're going to need a lot of storage, so I tend to build quite a few of these and hook them up to an AE2 system, and then that is all of my mob farming done for the entire playthrough. That is basically everything you need to know about hostile neural networks. So if you have got any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments down below. And if you want to show off your hostile neural network builds, then make sure to join the Discord. Link will be down in the description below. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. I have been Hellfire Mage. This has been Hostile Neural Networks, and I will see you next time. Bye!